Welcome, everyone. We're glad to bring on you another episode of Ashram Talks on our journey through the Bhagavad Gita. Remember that if you haven't watched our past episodes, you can catch up anytime on our YouTube channel. So today we finished chapter 1 with verses 44 to 46, exploring a topic that I personally find fascinating, and it's our true identity. Who are we beyond our daily designations, such as our names, our jobs, or even family roles? And to guide us through this, we're joined by Madhuvrata, originally from Birmingham in the UK. His background in fine arts sparked a deep spiritual search that led him to India, where he became a disciple of Srila Bhaktivedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj. Madhuvrata spent several years living as a monk, serving closely with his teacher, especially as his personal cook while traveling the world, and immersing himself in traditional Vedic studies, kirtan, and sacred service. Today he lives with his wife in Sussex, where they're transforming a medieval farmhouse into a retreat center. He continues, of course, to teach Bhakti Yoga and share his experience with spiritual seekers around the world. And now we're so glad to have you here with us, Madhuvrata. We're truly honored. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much, Subhadra, and thank you for the introduction. So
I was
sorry, carry on.
I'm sorry. Yeah, no, I was wondering if before we start you could like give us a brief glimpse of how was the first time you asked yourself, like, who am I? Or have you ever asked this question to yourself?
Well, yes, I think especially in my sort of 20s, then I was very interested in different types of philosophy and different types of like the traditional philosophy of England and Celts and Druids, and I was also interested in different types of magic and this and that, and I read quite extensively all different types of philosophies, really, and systems and religions and processes, and at the core of that there is this desire to understand the true self. Who am I? Am I this physicality, or am I something beyond that? So I think that question has always sort of been brewing down, in my heart, and I've always wanted to explore that. And and so this Bhagavad Gita, as I'll explain in the class, it really answered all of those questions. So I think I'm a lifelong
Well,
seeker.
thank you so much. Yes, and thank you once again for sharing your own realizations. The stage is all yours.
Thank you. Well, and thank you also for asking me to do this, because this Bhagavad Gita is not an ordinary text, if you like. It's a sound vibration, and it's not just those who are hearing that descriptions of the Bhagavad Gita that benefit, or hopefully benefit from today's class, but it's also the speaker. So the speaker repeating what they have learned and possibly realized from Bhagavad Gita is very beneficial also for the speaker. So this is called, it's part of the process called kirtan. So we have two things, Shravan and Kirtan, within our Bhakti tradition, and that is hearing and also chanting or repeating. So this opportunity to repeat what I have imbibed from the Bhagavad Gita, it's a great opportunity for me. So thank you very much for that. So today, following on from our last class with Simon Haas, Sundar, we're discussing Bhagavad Gita, chapter 1, verses 44, 45, and 46. So before I begin, I'll just do a brief Mangala Charana, which is to honor my own teachers who I've received this knowledge through. So my own teacher, his name is Srila Bhaktivedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj. So first of all, I'll just give a short invocation. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Namoram Vishnu Padaya Radhikaye Priyatmane Shri Srimad Bhaktivedanta Narayan Goswami Iti Namine. So up to now in the Bhagavad Gita, we're pretty much all the way through chapter 1, and we're going into the last chapters before chapter 2, which is a very exciting chapter. I'm looking forward to that. And as Simon Haas said, I think in his first lecture, there is a tendency to sort of skip over this chapter because it deals with some difficult subjects, and go straight into the philosophy, into the sort of juice of it. But as I'm discovering, actually, from this, listening to these classes on Ashram Talks, then the subject of chapter 1 is very important. Because we hear that how Arjuna, who is actually an eternal associate of Sri Krishna, he has taken the role of falling into illusion, just like the conditioned souls of this world, just like you and I. There is an element of illusion within Arjuna, and he is, even though Arjuna is not illusioned, he's taken that role so that Krishna can impart to him transcendental knowledge. So Arjuna, at this point, he's gone between his army and the army of the Kurus, and after surveying the army, he's seeing that so many of his relatives, uncles, grandfathers, well-wishers, teachers, so many of them are on the opposing side of the battlefield, and he becomes confused as to what he should do and what he shouldn't do. So he becomes confused as to his duty in this field. I think Simon Haas called it like the field of now also. So the field of direct experience. So we all find ourselves within that field of now, or field of experience. So in some ways you can say that this Kurukshetra, this battlefield, it's comparable to our day-to-day field of experience, although maybe in some ways not so dramatic for all of us, but certainly we are within this field of experience and having to deal with day-to-day things that are coming at us. So what is it that we are actually dealing with? I'm just giving a little intro actually before we go into the verses, if I didn't say that. We're dealing with the results of our previous activities. Those are good and bad. So in the Vedas and in the Bhagavad Gita, it teaches us that according to our past good and bad, if you like, activities, or just due to our past activities, then we are experiencing a particular type of reality now. So this is called, in Sanskrit, this is called prarabdha karma. So that means the manifestation of our past activities, the design of our past activities has created who we are now. So we have a certain set of parents, we have a certain types of relatives, we have a nationality, we have a body type, a mind, a certain type of health, certain types of proclivity. So these are all really, if we look into it very deeply, and Bhagavad Gita later on teaches this, that these are all like a result of our past good and bad activities. So really our present situation is like a design of our own making. So I found this very liberating to understand this, because it means really that our present situation is really nobody else's fault. Because I think in this world, there's a tendency generally to think, oh, this person, he did that to me, or this situation happened and it wasn't my fault, this and that. But actually, to a certain extent, we have designed this current situation for ourselves, and only we are responsible then for changing it. It's not that the government should change it, or this person should change it, or that person. we are responsible for our own situation and what we do with that. So in some ways, Arjuna's crisis here, he's looking at this same field of activity, and to a certain extent, he has created that reality as well, of the reality of the battlefield, because they were impelled to fight in this way. So now Arjuna must choose to act, and he becomes illusioned so that Krishna can give him this transcendental knowledge. And as we have heard in previous episodes, this is called Vishad. This chapter is called Vishad Yoga, which means the yoga of crisis. And from this crisis of Arjuna, then it turns into a transformational period where transcendental knowledge is imparted to him. And the real situation of where he is and where he finds himself is given. Because the Bhagavad Gita, I've heard it said before that the Bhagavad Gita should be given when we take birth, because actually it's like a manual for life and how to navigate life and how to prioritize activities, spiritual activities, and all of these things. It's so important. And I remember the first time that I came across Bhagavad Gita, I felt like I've read this before. This is all like knowledge that I already knew, maybe from a past life, or I don't know, but it's like I recognized the truth within the Bhagavad Gita. So that said, let's look at text 44, chapter 1 of the Bhagavad Gita. So this verse, Aho bata mata mahat papam katum vyavasa visata vayam. I shouldn't have attempted the Sanskrit. Yadraja sukalobena hantum swa janam udyataha. So the English translation for this is, alas, how strange it is that we are preparing to commit greatly sinful acts, driven by the desire to enjoy royal happiness. So Arjuna here, he's making a moral argument against this battle. Basically, Arjuna at this point is trying to come up with rational and moral and different types of reasons why he shouldn't engage in this battle, because his mind is reeling and spinning, seeing that his duty is now to fight against his bodily relatives. So in this verse, it says, you can see that in the first line, mahat papam. So this means a great sin. So Arjuna, he's referring to Dharma Shastra here, which is like a type of moral scripture, where he says, well, if we do this, then a great sin will be incurred. So he's looking for different reasons to be able to basically not act, which is, we'll see, is what he tries to do at the end of the chapter. And swajanam, that means his own kinsman. So Arjuna is seeing these personalities on the battlefield in relation to him as his own kinsman. So then text 45, we could have that one. I'm not going to attempt the Sanskrit this time. So the English translation, I would consider it better for the sons of Dhritarashtra to kill me unarmed and unresisting rather than fighting with them. So he's considering that it would be better for him to die so that all of these other that he deems inauspicious effects and events would be circumvented. He would just surrender and be killed on the battlefield rather than engage in this warfare. So we can think here that Srila Prabhupada, he explains in the purport that this means Arjuna is very soft-hearted, which means also that he is maybe possessed of discrimination. So he's very intelligent and he's a devotee of Krishna. So he possesses this discriminatory knowledge. Somebody else may just think, oh, well, if I kill all of those people, then I will get their land, and then I will get their wealth, and then, I will be happy, kind of thing. But he's not thinking like that, because he's a very considered and intelligent person. So he's thinking like this, but also he's playing, as we said before, he's playing the part of being illusioned as to the reality of the situation. We have to remember that Arjuna is on the chariot with Krishna, and all auspiciousness is on his side, and Krishna is instructing and impelling him to do his duty in this way. So he's seeing with, as we heard from Haripriya the other day, he's seeing with material vision. In other words, he's seeing that all of these relatives are connected with him. But in truth, the teachings of the Bhagavad Gita, as we'll find out later on, is that we are not this physical body. So the title of the class is really, Who Am I? So we have this concept within material life of I and mine. In other words, I am this body, and everything that is related to this body is mine, and is mine to enjoy, in fact, because this is the basic tenet of material life. So this is called ahankara, or false egoism. And also it's known as avidya, ignorance. So this concept of I and mine. So the Gita instructs about who is the real self. So who am I? Who are all these other personalities? What is this world? What is our purpose within it? So the inquisitive soul, one who is not just only sort of traveling with life and going along with everything that happens, for the inquisitive soul, many answers are given within the Bhagavad Gita. And we'll see in the next chapter, then Krishna begins to instruct Atma Tattva. In other words, who is the self? Who am I? And really, what am I doing here? And this is very clever way of teaching, because Krishna's first not talking about himself or the divine or the larger spiritual kind of entity or God, you could say. He's talking about the self, and people in general are very interested to hear about the self, right? So beginning with this subject of Atma Tattva, or who am I? So first, to understand even theoretically that we are an eternal particle of consciousness composed of eternality, knowledge, and bliss. Even theoretically, if we can understand this, it's very liberating from our general day-to-day material vision and material paradigm that, for instance, I am Madhuvrata and I am English and you have these parents, and etc. So we can think along a different paradigm that we are actually spirit soul, and the soul itself has his self or herself has a duty and a service and activities and all of these things. So we're very short of time to be able to go right into this. But if you stay tuned to the next episodes, then many of these things are uncovered. So if we go to text 46. So then Sanjaya, who we know is the narrator of the Gita, who is narrating the Gita to the blind king Dhritarashtra, he then says, Arjuna, having thus spoken on the battlefield, cast aside his bow and arrows and sat down on the chariot, his mind overwhelmed with grief. So in this condition, Arjuna is seeing this with this material vision. He's seeing this whole battlefield, just as we are within material life, And at some point, it all becomes too much. We might have experienced this ourselves. It all just becomes too much. So he sits down, puts aside his bow, and he says, right, I'm just not doing this anymore. So he becomes overwhelmed by grief and illusion. So at this point, then we'll discover in the next chapter, then he accepts higher guidance. So we can also look at this verse as Arjuna completely surrendering and saying, okay, now my own intelligence has reached its limit. I don't know what to do, what not to do. And then we hear in the next chapter that he says to Krishna, please instruct me as to what is my correct course of action. So really the way out of this is to accept higher guidance. And this higher guidance can come to us even in the form of just in the form of the Bhagavad Gita. I mean, I went through in my sort of mid to late 20s, I went through this kind of dark night of the soul type of experience. And somehow the wisdom of the Bhagavad Gita and the Vedas found its way into my life personally, and really sort of liberated me from that whole situation. I thought I was enjoying myself, but I was actually in a very sort of dark period. And interestingly enough, I met a man who wasn't really, you couldn't really say he was a Krishna devotee, lived in a caravan. And he told me, first of all, he completely deconstructed my false ego by shouting at me a lot. And then he showed me this Bhagavad Gita, and he said, this is your path. You should follow this path. So, and really, I never saw him again. He was like a mystical sort of personality who just appeared and disappeared. But then by following the Bhagavad Gita, this pulled me out of this similar illusion to how Arjuna is experiencing, and led me into, first of all, the higher guidance of the Bhagavad Gita and other texts. But then ultimately, by desire for more higher guidance, it led me to my teacher. So I traveled to India, and I met my teacher, whose name is Srila Bhaktivedanta Narayan Maharaj, and lived with him pretty much full on for about 12 years. And I'm not saying that people need to do this, but this was my route and course out of that very dark period. So one more thing I wanted to discuss, that Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, who's also one of our great teachers, in his Jaiva Dharma, he explains that this material energy and this embodied existence, at some point, it pushes us into the position of asking, who am I? So we experience day to day the grind of life, some people call it, right? So at some point during whatever kind of birth we have, we will stop and we will ask, who am I? And also, why am I within this world? There was a great saint called Sanatan Goswami, and he asked these questions in another Shastra called Chaitanya Charitamrita. He said, Kayami, who am I? And he said, why am I suffering these threefold miseries? And he asked another great teacher, who is actually Krishna himself as well, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and they had a similar conversation. Many of these shastras are actually written, scriptures are written in the form of conversations between guru and disciple like this. So my journey into the Bhagavad Gita was, I just sat every morning and I read one verse. So, and I carried that verse with me throughout the day. So it's a good meditation if we can just, if we've not read the Gita and we find it, it's a huge book and it seems quite overwhelming, then we can just go like bite size. And in a way, that's what we are also doing with this Ashram Talks, is we are just going step by step, verse by verse. and take each verse and use it as our meditation for the day. And it can lead to some incredible places. I remember when I first read the Bhagavad Gita in my sort of very illusioned state, that I felt it was like a sort of journey through other galaxies. It was quite an incredible experience, and I'm so happy to be returning to the Gita, because there's so many Vedic scriptures that we tend to think, oh well, I've read the Bhagavad Gita, but you can read the Bhagavad Gita again and again and again, and every time new realizations will come according to our position, our practice, our age. Then so many newer and newer teachings. So I'm really happy that Ashram Talks have asked me to talk on this subject, because it means that I can return and learn myself, because I'm not claiming that, in any way that I have realized the teachings of the Bhagavad Gita, but so for my own benefit as well. So that's it. We've reached the end of chapter 1, and I'm sure everyone's very excited to dive into chapter 2 and the nectar of the instructions of Krishna to Arjuna. So thank you very much, Subhadra Dasi. Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much, Madhuvrata. Well, I think I'm not sure if this is a question or a comment, but here we have a comment from our audience that says, "Who am I?" I don't know if you'd like to add anything to this. Thinking that it's a question, maybe.
Well, I think we can start by thinking, who am I not? Because we can say, we can think about the body, and we can say, well, am I this little finger, right? Am I these four fingers and a thumb? Am I this hand? Am I this arm? No, right? Am I this torso, legs? Am I this mind? Am I even my intelligence? Am I my nationality? Am I my football team? Am I my favorite musical art? No, none of these things I am, because I am the consciousness that is observing all of those things. So I think in reply, we can begin to understand who I am by thinking about who I am not, really. So maybe that helps, Dylan. I'm not sure, but it's a little meditation that you can do.
Absolutely. Yes, we all have to try to go deeper inside ourselves. Not only to, it's not only about hearing, okay, I'm not this, I'm not that, or even knowing, okay, I'm a spiritual soul, but it's about actually understanding the meaning. Like, what do I do with that knowledge? How can I apply that to my daily life? How can I
Yes,
use that?
absolutely.
Or
Yeah,
how can I serve that knowledge?
yes, that's a really good point, and I think that's what we're trying to elucidate in these classes, right? How we can actually practically engage this knowledge in our day-to-day life. And I would say that if we can keep that conception with us, that actually I'm not this physical body, I am an eternal particle of consciousness riding in this body. Like later in the Gita, it says, we are riding on a machine made of material nature. So we are really riding within this machine as a particle of consciousness. That even if we can think about this, one time at work, or when we're on the bus, or it just changes the whole paradigm of our day-to-day world, and it helps a lot.
Thank you so much. So, with this insightful class, we end chapter 1 of the Bhagavad Gita. We're gonna be continuing on Monday at 7:30 p.m. So you're all invited to catch up our live sessions. Remember, they are on Mondays at 7:30 p.m. EST and Thursdays at 8 a.m. EST. Also, remember to catch up our live sessions and subscribe to our YouTube channel, Ashram Talks English. And feel free to follow us on Instagram at Ashram Talks ENG. Thanks, Madhuvrata.
Thank you.
for sharing your knowledge, your wisdom. And thanks to all our audience. Thank you for your comments, your interaction, your support. It's very important for us to have you here. And well, that being said, see you next Monday.
Thank you,
Bye.
Subhadra. Goodbye.
Thank you. Thank you so much.